All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about Trevor Lawrence, just some comments that he made after getting his big extension. So let's get into that. So this is what he had to say. Obviously, financially, it's amazing and really sets us up for the future and for the rest of our lives. That's a huge blessing. Obviously, that's a big deal, but I think even more than that is the stability of being here for the long term. However many years it ends up being, I guess it could be 7, could be however many it ends up being. Still, that's a long time to be able to say we're gonna be here and have confidence and know that means a lot to us. We love it here. It's become home. The way the organization's going and the direction that we're heading on the football side, what makes it obviously a no-brainer for us. We're headed in the right direction, and I want to be the quarterback here. I want to bring a championship to Jacksonville. That's my goal. I really know that we can accomplish that. And then he also said, I'm not going to add any pressure to myself just based on getting this contract. It doesn't really change what I expect of myself and what the team expects of me, whether this got done or not. Mr. Khan, Trent, Doug, everyone, all the coaches expect me to play well, like I said, to bring a championship here eventually, now that it's done. It doesn't really change that, but like I said, maybe from the outside, it will a bit, but not for me. Then he also said, there's always a balancing act of however many years you do. Sometimes that can put the team in a better position, which is great. That was our goal, which I'm glad I felt we were able to accomplish. Obviously, there was a certain amount as a player you want to make, and you want to be in the market value and all those things, but you also want to keep the team in a good position to where we can pay other guys and have other players around me and do all those things from a salary cap perspective. I don't know how all that works, but I just felt like my agent and Trent and the whole front office did a good job of kind of maneuvering all those things where it felt like we all won in the end, and it puts us in a position to where we can still have a lot of talent here, and we can bring guys in, or we can keep the guys that we have. That was something that was important to me because it wasn't worth it to me to sacrifice being able to have a good team just so I can make some money. I think this is definitely the best team that we've had here in my eyes just at this point in the year. From what I've seen, I feel very confident in that. So yeah, had a lot to say. Of course, very excited about the new deal and is ready to get to work and win a championship and hopefully bring home a championship to Jacksonville. And he said, towards the end there, that he feels like this is the best team that they've had since he's been there. And hopefully it is for Jacksonville's sake, because last year, I've said it a bunch of times now, but I thought once they won that game in Houston, I thought the division was over. I thought the Jaguars, they wrapped up the division, and they were on their way to another playoff appearance. But that ended up not happening. And I think part of that, again, was that Trevor Lawrence got hurt towards the end of the year. Like, they lost that tough overtime game to the Bengals. I feel like if Trevor Lawrence doesn't get hurt in that game, they probably win, and then we're having a different conversation. The Texans, they end up not winning the division, and the Jags, they end up getting in at 10-7 because they ended up finishing 9-8. They were like 8-3, 8-4 at that point, and they ended up losing the division. They had a collapse, and also the Eagles had a collapse, but I think the Eagles' collapse was, actually they were both bad because the Eagles were 10-1, and then they ended up finishing the season 11-6. The Jags were 8-4, 8-3 at that point, and they ended up finishing 9-8. So, but the Jags, they missed the playoffs. The Eagles still made it. It's just then that playoff game against the Bucs, that was rough. But yeah, in terms of where the Jaguars are in the landscape of the AFC, right now I look at them as probably a wild card team. And that's because of if they were to make the playoffs. But that's because I just think the Texans are better. The Texans, they really exceeded expectations last year. They won the division. They won a home playoff game. And even during the regular season, both games, well, not both games, but the Texans, they won by, a few scores in Jacksonville, if you remember. And then the Jags won in Houston, but that was a very close game. That game could have gone either way. So the Texans, they could have swept the Jags last year. Yeah, actually, if we can go back to that game, because I think the final score was what? I think it was like 37 to 17, something like that. Yeah, like CJ Stroud had like 3 touchdowns in the game. Yeah, they won 37 to 17. CJ Stroud he had 2 touchdowns. He went 20 of 30, 280 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence went 27 of 40, 279 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And actually, the Jaguars got shut out in the first half. They scored all their points in the second half. They scored 10 in the third quarter and 7 in the fourth quarter. Tank Dell had a breakout game. He had 5 receptions for 145 yards and a touchdown. But yeah, that was very early on in the season, and then the other game was the second game in Houston was close. But yeah, I mean, I view the Jaguars, if they're going to make the playoffs, I think it's going to be as a wild card team, and I think the division is tougher. You got Anthony Richardson coming back and playing a full season. I think the Titans, they got a little bit better. But we'll see how Will Levis is. I mean, it really is all going to depend on how Will Levis plays. If he doesn't play well, then it doesn't really matter. But yeah, division's going to be better, and the conference is just loaded. So they're going to have to find a way. And last year, like I said, was a tough year for Trevor Lawrence. He threw a lot of interceptions last year. Dealt with injuries towards the end of the year. 2022 has been his best season so far. And we're hoping that he could be more of his 2022 self and actually be even better. Because, I mean, you're making $55 million a year. You kind of expect, Trevor Lawrence to be, at the top with a lot of these elite level quarterbacks. And the first year, we kind of throw that out the window because that was a mess. The second year was like, okay, they made a run towards the second, in the second half of the season. They won the division. They won a playoff game. They had that epic comeback against the Chargers. They did lose a tough game to the Chiefs. But you thought, okay, the Jags, they're going to be a good team for a long time. And then last year, they kind of took a step back. They still finished with the winning record, but, they collapsed and missed the playoffs. So they're hoping for a better outcome in 2024. They kind of been missing that number 1 wide receiver, and they're hoping that Brian Thomas Jr. could be that. I mean, Calvin Ridley, I guess, was that last year, but, Ridley also didn't play for 2 years. Actually still finished with over 1,000 yards, but, they had to find a replacement for Ridley. They got Brian Thomas Jr., they signed Gabe Davis. You got Christian Kirk, who hopefully is going to come back, because he dealt with, well, he's going to come back, but he dealt with injuries last year. Evan Ingram's been a good player for them. And you got Travis Etienne. So, yeah, I mean, I like the Jags offense. We'll see how that is. Like I said, the defensive line for Jacksonville, that could be pretty good this year. So they do have the players. They have the ability to go out there and be a good team. Is Trevor Lawrence going to take that next step? And like I said, get back to that 2022 season and perform even better than that. Because that's what, many people are hoping for. Because, when he came out of college, there was a lot of hype around him. And, I mean, he hasn't lived up to that hype just yet. He's got to do more. But now he's got the contract. And, we'll see, if he's healthier. But if he stays healthy. But, if this season goes sideways, there's going to be changes. And, you're probably going to see Doug Peterson gone. Trent Baalke's going to be gone, if that's the case. So, I'm curious to see how they bounce back. There's just a lot of stuff, going into the season that you want to just get to it already so you can see how these teams are. The Jaguars are one of those teams. How are they going to respond after that, free fall that they went into last year? So, but I think, he's motivated. He wants to bring a championship to Jacksonville. It's going to be very tough because, you got the Chiefs and the Ravens and, the Bengals, all these other teams. You're going to have to try to go out there and beat these teams. Someone's got to knock off the Chiefs at some point. They have gotten knocked off before, but, the team, at least the AFC team that's knocked them off, as a. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that because the Patriots did it as well, but, the Patriots are now not really a factor in the conversation, but the one that's still active, Joe Burrow, that's really it. There's nobody else that has been able to knock off Patrick Mahomes that's still playing. So, the Jags, they've matched up with the Chiefs a few times the last couple of years, and they've lost all three matchups, in the regular season and in the postseason. So, but they got a long way to go before they get to that. But Trevor Lawrence is in good spirits. Like I said, I think he deserved to get paid, just not that kind of money. But that's the position he plays. So we'll see how it all shapes out. But let me know what you guys think about what Trevor Lawrence had to say. How do you see the Jaguars performing in 2024? Do they bounce back? Let me know in the comments. So that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will be back on Monday. And actually, it'll be my last week before I go on a little vacation. Yeah, we will get into more of that. Well, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. So next Friday will be my last day before I go on vacation. So, yeah. But that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to go check out all of our other shows as well. And, so with that, that is all the time that we have. We'll be back again on Monday, same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day. Enjoy the weekend, and I will see you guys on Monday. Take care.